So, on May 25th, 2026, a digital sensor network basically saved 50,000 lives in California.
Right.
But then on that exact same day, a hypersonic missile proved that, millions of dollars of defensive technology in Ukraine is just completely obsolete.
Yeah, it's
Welcome to
wild.
the deep dive. Because when you look at this stack of briefings you sent us, this incredibly detailed morning briefing from Memorial Day, you really start to notice this fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying pattern.
You really do.
We are looking at a world where the speed of technology is radically outpacing human adaptation.
It is a massive contrast. I mean, you look at these sources, and on the surface, they seem like, completely isolated events,
Right.
like a chemical spill on the West Coast, a market shift on Wall Street, a cybersecurity breach in Europe.
Yeah.
But when you synthesize them, the underlying architecture of our modern world is just totally exposed. Our everyday human systems, from global defense all the way down to a high school classroom, they are just struggling to handle the sheer velocity of the tools we've built.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our mission today is to figure out exactly how these pieces connect.
Definitely.
So let's start with the most immediate physical impacts of this tech, like the places where engineering directly dictates life and death. You mentioned the California event.
Right.
For those who haven't seen the alert, Governor Gavin Newsom just had to declare a state of emergency in Orange County. There's this aerospace manufacturing plant with a failing, overheating chemical tank.
Yeah, and the stakes there are incredibly high.
Because it's not just like regular factory smoke, right?
Exactly. These aren't standard commercial chemicals.
Right.
This facility handles industrial compounds used in aerospace propulsion.
Wow.
So a catastrophic failure or a rupture risks a massive toxic release across a very densely populated suburban corridor south of Los Angeles.
See, the sheer scale of the response is what really caught my eye. I mean, they issued a mandatory evacuation for 50,000 residents.
Right.
And hazmat crews are working around the clock just to cool this tank down. But, I mean, how does an evacuation of that size actually happen fast enough to beat a chemical explosion?
It really comes down to a fundamental shift in how we monitor industrial sites. The briefing highlights that this response relied heavily on automated hazmat detection systems.
Okay.
We are essentially seeing the payoff of post-Bhopal safety investments.
Right, the tragedy in India.
Yes. In the 1980s, the Bhopal disaster was essentially a blind catastrophe. No one knew the gas was leaking until people were literally dying.
That's awful.
But today, we have these industrial sites wired with the Internet of Things, or IoT. You've got hundreds of thermal and pressure sensors that are constantly talking to each other. So when this aerospace tank started overheating, the system recognized the thermal runaway instantly.
And then it triggers the geo-targeted wireless emergency alerts, right?
Exactly.
Which, just to be clear, that isn't just a broad radio broadcast hoping people have their dials tuned in.
Oh, no. The system interfaces directly with regional cell towers.
Wow.
Yeah, so if your mobile device is connected to a tower within that specific blast or toxic radius, the system just bypasses your silent mode. It blares an alarm directly to your screen.
That is incredible.
The technology recognized the threat faster than humanly possible and coordinated a massive human evacuation.
It's like a digital nervous system.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, like the IoT sensors act like the nerve endings, right? Feeling the heat and detecting the danger.
Right.
And they instantly warn the brain, which is the emergency response grid, which then tells the body, the 50,000 residents, to literally move out of harm's way.
That's exactly how it works.
And that is a scenario where the tech was faster than the disaster, which is great. But then you turn the page in the briefing to the war in Ukraine.
Yep.
And the disaster is the technology itself.
Yes, unfortunately. Russia launched its largest combined barrage of the entire war overnight.
The numbers are staggering.
We're talking 600 drones and 90 missiles. And the briefing notes that Russia's defense ministry framed this massive attack as retaliation for Ukrainian strikes on Russian territory. Now, we're just looking at what the sources say here.
Right, exactly. Just reporting the claims from the briefing.
Exactly. But the human toll is undeniable. At least 2 people were killed and 77 injured in Belets-Serkva, which is about 50 miles south of Kyiv.
It's just devastating. But looking purely at the mechanics of the weaponry here, the standout detail is the deployment of the Oreshnik hypersonic ballistic missile.
Yes,
Because this is only its 3rd deployment ever, right?
that's correct.
And while Ukrainian defenses intercepted most of the conventional drones and missiles, The Oreshnik just punched right through.
Because it operates on a fundamentally different physical principle than traditional threats.
How so?
Well, a standard ballistic missile goes high up into the atmosphere or even into space, and then comes down in a predictable parabolic arc.
Like throwing a football.
Precisely. A computer can calculate exactly where it will be in 2 minutes and shoot an interceptor at that exact spot.
Okay, that makes sense.
But hypersonic weapons like the Oreshnik travel at Mach 5 or faster. And crucially, they maneuver dynamically within the atmosphere.
Oh, wow. So they steer.
Yes. By the time a traditional radar system tracks it, calculates its trajectory, and fires an interceptor, the Oreshnik has already changed course.
Wait, so if our current radar and interceptors fundamentally cannot catch it, does that mean defensive technology is just like permanently broken right now?
Well, it has forced a massive, incredibly expensive pivot in military strategy. Because the Oreshnik evades physical interceptors, there is now unprecedented pressure on U.S. and NATO defense contractors to accelerate directed energy weapons.
Directed energy, you mean lasers?
Yes, you cannot shoot a physical bullet at a maneuvering hypersonic missile. You have to shoot a high-powered laser because a laser moves at the speed of light.
Right.
That is literally the only thing faster than the missile.
But developing weapons that fire at the speed of light, I mean, that requires an astronomical amount of money and research.
Astronomical is the right word.
Yeah, and that exact same engine-like massive capital and bleeding-edge engineering is what's driving the next frontier in the briefing.
Which is the commercial space race.
Exactly. Because the leap from defense tech in the atmosphere to space exploration is basically a straight line.
Absolutely. The aerospace engineering required to build a hypersonic missile is very adjacent to the engineering required to sustain human life in orbit.
And we are seeing major milestones there right now. China just successfully launched the Shenzhou 23 spacecraft to its Tiangong space station with 3 astronauts.
Yes, and one of those astronauts is Lai Ka-ying.
Right, who is notably the first astronaut from Hong Kong.
Exactly.
But the really fascinating part of this mission, at least to me, is the duration. Because she is scheduled to stay in orbit for a full year.
A full year, yes.
She's rotating out the Shenzhou 21 crew, who are up there for over 200 days. But why a full year? Like, what happens to the human body at that point?
What's fascinating here is how the mechanism of microgravity is just incredibly harsh on our biology.
Really? In what way?
Well, when you remove Earth's gravity, the fluids in your body literally shift upward toward your head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which increases intracranial pressure.
Yeah.
And your bones start shedding calcium rapidly because they no longer need to support your physical weight.
That sounds terrible.
It is. Your cardiovascular system weakens too. If the international community is going to send humans to Mars, which is a journey of at least 7 months just one way, we need exact, granular biological data on how a human body degrades over 365 uninterrupted days in space.
So China is pushing the absolute boundaries of human biology in orbit. But meanwhile, the commercial space sector here in the U.S. is pushing the absolute limits of Wall Street.
That's a great transition because, yes, SpaceX has officially filed its S-1 prospectus with the SEC.
Yeah. They are targeting a NASDAQ listing under the ticker symbol SPCX, potentially by June 11th or 12th.
And for those unfamiliar with the terminology, an S-1 prospectus is essentially a mandatory financial X-ray.
Right.
When a private company wants to sell shares to the public, they have to open their books, reveal all their risks, and justify their value to the Securities and Exchange Commission.
And the valuation SpaceX is anticipating is staggering.
Unbelievable.
Approximately $1.75 trillion.
Yeah.
Just try to visualize the scale of that number. It would completely eclipse Saudi Aramco's 2019 debut to become the largest IPO in stock market history.
It redefines the market.
It does. But here's what I really want to know. Because the briefing notes this filing is arriving right alongside OpenAI's confidential S-1 and Anthropic's planned October listing.
Yes, the big AI players.
Exactly. So if these companies go public and they have to answer to quarterly shareholders, doesn't that completely change how these world-altering tools are priced and shared?
It completely mutates their operational incentives.
Right.
The trio of these listings represents the definitive end of the private market-only AI era.
Which means what, practically?
Well, when a company like OpenAI is private, it can burn billions of dollars of venture capital cash on pure research and development.
Sure.
It doesn't need to turn a profit today. But the moment you ring that bell on the NASDAQ, you have a fiduciary duty to public shareholders.
And Wall Street demands quarterly earnings growth.
Exactly.
So the era of move fast and break things with endless cash becomes move fast and show me a profit margin.
Very quickly.
And we are already seeing the economic shockwave of AI integration as these companies try to monetize. Like, let's look at Google's I/O event.
Oh, yes.
They just announced their biggest search redesign in 25 years.
They've launched this AI mode that deploys autonomous information agents.
And these aren't just normal algorithms, right?
No, not at all. These aren't traditional algorithms that just match keywords to a website. These are large language models actively reading the internet, synthesizing the information, and presenting the final answer directly on your search results page.
See, it's brilliant for the user, but it's catastrophic for the creators.
It really is.
It's like having a librarian who reads the book to you right at the front door, so you never actually walk down the aisles, and you certainly never support the author.
That is exactly what's happening, and the collateral damage is already visible. Look at Chegg.
The homework platform.
Yes, the massive education and homework help platform. They reported a 49% drop in organic traffic right after this launch.
49%. Half their traffic.
Gone. And we have to understand what organic traffic actually means for the internet. Organic traffic is the lifeblood of the open web. It's the people who find your website naturally through a search engine query.
Right.
If that traffic drops by half overnight because the AI is just giving the user the answer, your revenue model is destroyed. Publishers and small businesses are sounding the alarm because this breaks the fundamental economic contract of the internet.
And the briefing makes it clear this is a direct threat to the education system, too.
Yes.
Because free K-12 resources, open access tutors, teacher resource hubs, they all rely on search traffic to sustain their platforms. If they lose that, they just shut down.
Exactly. But it also hits the school districts directly.
Oh, right, through their digital infrastructure.
Yes. Schools rely heavily on APIs, application programming interfaces.
Okay.
Think of an API as a digital plug that allows a school's grading software or learning portal to talk directly to an AI engine.
Got it.
Now, during the private era, AI companies offered cheap or even free API access to schools to get them hooked on the ecosystem.
Of course, get them in the door.
Exactly. But as OpenAI and Anthropic take on public shareholders and that quarterly earnings pressure we talked about, the era of subsidized AI for education is evaporating.
So prices go up.
Districts are being told to audit their digital curriculums right now because the bills are about to skyrocket.
Which is terrifying for public school budgets. But, here is where it gets really interesting. Because humans aren't just sitting back and letting this technology wash over them.
Right.
We are strategically asserting control. In some places, we're hyper-specializing the tech, and in others, we are fiercely pushing back.
We are.
So let's start with the pushback. There's this massive study from Education Next regarding cell phone bans in Florida.
It is a remarkably rigorous piece of peer-reviewed research.
Yeah.
They analyzed a large, unnamed urban district in Florida that implemented a strict bell-to-bell cell phone ban for middle and high schoolers.
And the results look incredible on paper. I mean, phone interactions dropped from 46 daily uses per 100 students down to just 10.
A massive reduction.
Huge. And it supposedly translated to actual academic outcomes. Math and reading scores jumped approximately 3.5 percentiles over 2 years. But I have to play devil's advocate here. Is that actually causation or just correlation? Like, how do we know it was the removal of the phones and not, say, a brand new curriculum they rolled out that year?
Well, it's the critical question, and it's exactly why this specific study is moving legislation in over 16 states right now.
Really?
Yes, because the researchers controlled for those external variables.
Oh, I see.
By tracking the specific sharp drop in daily phone interactions alongside the specific cohorts of students, they isolated the impact of the bell-to-bell ban.
So it really was the phones.
Yes. The mechanism at play here is cognitive load.
Right.
When you remove the constant fragmented interruption of a glowing screen vibrating in a pocket, a student's working memory can actually engage with and retain the lesson.
It's a direct causal link.
It is a direct causal link between removing a generalized digital distraction and improving human cognitive performance.
That is fascinating. We literally physically remove the technology to improve the human. And speaking of directly supporting human development, the federal government just added $144 million in funding for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA.
Yes, and that covers infants all the way to young adults.
Right. And what stood out to me is that they are expanding guidance to use those funds to support expectant parents before birth.
It's a massive commitment during a time of broader federal education cuts.
Yeah.
It shifts the model from a reactive stance, waiting until a child is already in the school system, to provide help to a proactive stance, providing early intervention resources exactly where the human friction point begins.
So precision is the key.
Yes.
Which actually brings us to how we are hyper-specializing AI itself. Because, we talked about how general-purpose AI might be destroying the open web's economy. But specialized AI is achieving miracles.
It really is.
Just look at climate science. Researchers at UC San Diego and the Allen Institute used a model called spherical DY fusion to project 100 years of detailed climate patterns in just 25 hours.
Which is 25 times faster than current methods.
Right.
And the most important detail in the briefing is how they achieved that speed.
How did they?
They didn't rely on a multi-million-dollar national supercomputer. They ran this on standard GPU clusters.
Wait, like gaming chips?
Exactly. For the listener, a GPU is a graphics processing unit, the exact same architecture used for high-end video gaming.
That's wild.
By networking these off-the-shelf chips together with a highly optimized specialized AI model, they achieve these massive processing speeds. It completely democratizes the science, allowing smaller labs to test the climate impact of policy decisions in real time.
Is it possible that general-purpose AI is actually kind of a liability and the real future is hyper-specialized AI like this?
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yes.
tech succeeds when it solves a specific human friction point.
Like we're seeing in healthcare, too.
Yes.
There's this Copenhagen-based company called Corti. They just released a clinical AI speech-to-text system called Symphony, and it's designed specifically for real-time medical dictation. And in the benchmarks, it hit a 1.4% error rate in English medical contexts, which is crazy because, to put that in perspective, OpenAI's Whisper model had a 17.7% error rate.
And it even beat out Dragon Medical 1.
Yeah, but why is there such a massive gap between the two?
Because an emergency room is a chaotic, high-noise environment. People are shouting, machines are beeping, and doctors are speaking rapidly in very complex medical jargon.
It's just a mess of audio.
Exactly. A general-purpose AI like Whisper is trained on a massive generalized data set, everything from podcasts to cooking videos.
Right.
So in a high-stakes environment, it gets confused by the noise. But Corti's Symphony is trained exclusively on medical data.
Oh, I see.
It understands the acoustic environment of a hospital. It knows the critical difference between hyper and hypo when a patient's life is on the line.
That's a big difference.
A huge difference. And since excessive paperwork is a primary driver of physician burnout, this specialized tool removes that exact friction point.
Okay, so precision works.
It does.
But what happens when the attackers get precise? Because as we flip to the cybersecurity section of the briefing, we really have to look at the invisible digital infrastructure holding all of this together.
Yes, and it is highly vulnerable to automation.
Right, because it's under constant automated attack.
The defining characteristic of the cybersecurity landscape right now is severe asymmetry.
Asymmetry.
Yes. The attackers are using automation to scale their efforts, and human defenders simply cannot process the resulting volume.
Well, let's unpack this Laravel Lang PHP attack, because this blew my mind.
It's very concerning.
Attackers compromised this widely used open source localization library, right? And they published more than 700 poisoned package versions in rapid succession. They were dropping literally seconds apart.
Yes.
How does an attack like that actually function?
This is a textbook supply chain attack. Instead of trying to hack into 100,000 individual websites, the attackers compromise the central repository.
The supply chain itself.
Exactly. It's where developers go to download their translation tools. Think of it like poisoning the water supply at the central treatment plant, instead of trying to break into individual houses to poison their sinks.
That is terrifying.
It is. The attackers targeted maintainer accounts and used automated bots to rapidly upload these malicious updates. And those updates contained cross-platform credential stealers.
What does that mean?
It's software specifically designed to scrape passwords and session tokens, regardless of whether the victim was using a Mac, Windows, or a Linux machine.
Wow. And it's not just open source libraries, right? Nation-state actors are using incredible deception, too.
Yes, they are.
There's a Belarus-linked threat group known as Ghostwriter. I think the briefing calls them UAC00 Ariso 57 or UNC 1151.
Right.
And they are attacking Ukrainian government agencies right now.
Their methodology is highly sophisticated because it relies on exploiting systemic trust.
How so?
They're running a phishing campaign disguised as communications from Prometheus, which is a legitimate Ukrainian online learning platform.
A decoy.
Yes, and crucially, they use compromised, legitimate government email accounts to send these lures.
Oh, wow. So because the email originates from a real trusted server, it just completely bypasses the automated spam and security filters.
Exactly.
So the email gets to the target's inbox. If the victim opens the malicious PDF, what actually happens inside the machine?
It triggers a payload chain reaction. Opening the PDF acts like a tiny crowbar that pries open a backdoor in the system.
Okay.
That backdoor silently reaches out to the internet and downloads an encrypted payload. The briefing mentions Oyster Fresh, Oyster Blues, and Oyster Shuck payloads.
Right.
That payload acts as a persistent loader. Think of it as a specialized safecracker that installs itself permanently, hides from the antivirus software, and begins quietly siphoning out data.
The sophistication is just terrifying. But the briefing actually points out that the biggest vulnerability isn't even the software itself. It's the humans defending it.
Yes.
It is. There's a study here analyzing 25 million enterprise security alerts. 25 million. And enterprises are missing at least one critical threat every single week.
And it is not a technical failure of the detection systems. It is an unavoidable failure of human cognitive limits.
Right.
The study found that critical alerts are taking an average of 72 additional hours to be detected.
Because of alert fatigue.
Exactly.
Like, imagine trying to find one poisonous needle in a haystack, but a machine is actively burying it under 25 million pieces of fake hay. It's like trying to listen for the faint click of a burglar picking your front door lock, while your house's fire alarm, your car alarm, and every cell phone in the house is blaring at maximum volume simultaneously.
But that is the perfect analogy. The sheer volume of low-severity noise and false positives literally drowns out the critical signal. Human IT workers simply cannot process 25 million alerts.
No one could.
And the briefing explicitly notes how catastrophic this dynamic is for school IT departments. A public school district might only have one or two network administrators trying to manage an alert volume that a corporate team of 50 analysts would struggle with.
Right.
Without highly specialized AI triage tools to pre-filter that noise, they are completely blind.
It really all comes back to that tension we talked about at the start, the incredible automated speed of the machine versus the biological limits of the human.
Very true.
So let's shift gears for a minute as we wrap up, because the briefing also gave us a great rundown of what's trending on the internet today, Memorial Day 2026. Like, how are humans actually spending their time when they aren't dealing with hypersonic missiles and AI shockwaves?
Well, it's a day of significant cultural contrast.
Yeah.
Across the U.S., you have solemn ceremonies and moments of silence at places like Arlington National Cemetery, existing right alongside the unofficial start of summer with cookouts and beach crowds.
And sports fans are having a massive weekend. The 110th Indianapolis 500 sounds like it was one for the history books.
It really does.
Felix Rosenqvist won it in the closest finish in the race's 115-year history. He made a last-lap pass to beat David Malukas by .0233 seconds.
A margin of 0.02 of a second after 500 miles of racing is astounding.
And the race had a record 70 lead changes.
Wow.
That is just drafting mechanics and aerodynamic engineering at its absolute peak. Also trending heavily is AEW's Double or Nothing wrestling event.
Right, which is driving tons of real-time social reactions.
Yeah. And in the NBA playoffs, Chet Holmgren is dominating the conversation as he leads the OKC Thunder.
You know, amidst all the geopolitical tension and technological disruption we discussed today, these cultural rituals and shared entertainment really remain a vital anchor for people.
Definitely. But the briefing left us with one final, deeply profound story to close on, and I think it ties everything together perfectly.
I agree.
It's about a rewilding site in England. Researchers took this heavily degraded, intensively farmed agricultural land, and for 20 years, they just got out of the way.
Just step back.
Yeah. No fancy terraforming, no automated systems, they just let it sit.
And the mechanism of passive healing took over with stunning results.
Right.
Just by removing the human pressure, they documented a 900% increase in breeding birds.
900%.
Butterfly populations doubled. Dragonflies and damselflies surged by nearly 900% as well.
Wow.
Species of flora and fauna that had been locally extinct just naturally returned to the ecosystem.
You know, when you look at this whole stack of briefings today, you realize We are completely addicted to engineering our way out of
We
problems.
really are.
Like, we build hypersonic interceptors because we built hypersonic missiles.
Right.
We train AI to model the climate in 25 hours because our industrial systems ruin the climate in the first place.
Yeah.
We design automated triage systems to fight automated supply chain hacks.
We constantly build new tools to survive the consequences of our old tools.
Exactly. But if an entire ecosystem heals itself just because we stepped back and let nature take over, and if thousands of high school students suddenly see their reading and math scores jump just because we took their screens away,
Yeah?
perhaps the ultimate technological skill of the next decade won't be inventing the next great tool. Maybe it will be mastering the wisdom of knowing exactly when to turn our tools off.
That's a powerful reminder. Sometimes the most effective intervention we can make is simply creating space.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next one.